what Dallas Herring, the father of the community college, said. He said, what you need to do is to take the students that come through that door, take them where they are, and take them as far as they can go. And so that's going to be my focus from this point on. Not to get caught up in the confusion, if you will, but to work together and to provide for the students of Edgecombe Community College.
Well, it really is a pleasure to be here. I've enjoyed my day immensely, and we've had a partnership with Edgecombe Community College since 2005. So thank you for the invitation to be here. When I reflect on your opening remarks, I too am so in agreement. But I recently was speaking with someone about the word hope, and you mentioned the word hope, because when I think of hope, I think of students. And I think of the idea of respectful dialogue on difficult global issues. And by sharing your mission in terms of professionalism and problem solving here on the community colleges, and especially here, that's where I am really excited to hear about how things evolve today and tomorrow at your symposium, because I think respectful dialogue about difficult global issues is really the key. And hope is not a strategy, but boy, is it a terrific noun.
Microphone shot this afternoon. Microphone shot. I hate to bring this into this area, but you brought it up, and something I was raised on. My name is Michael Jordan. I've been working here at the college for a long time. I was disturbed by seeing that wall. I really don't like Franklin Street. That's another thing. For those of you who know me, know what I'm talking about. But one of the premises that I was raised on, and Mr. Herron, it isn't as bad as it used to be. The grandson of a domestic, great-grandson of a domestic. So, one of the things that we were taught growing up was our hope is built on nothing less. So, those of you know what I'm talking about.
I was intrigued by your contrast to the university culture and the community college culture, and how proactive students are in the university setting versus what we might observe with community college students. And I don't believe that there's a lack of care or concern or desire to problem solve with community college students. But from what I've observed in my short time span here on earth, the community college students, they're busy working versus the students at the university, where you mentioned, they have time to live there. They have that time to be able to go to being quite active and really engage in some of the issues. And something else that you mentioned that came across my mind when you gave us the term, if I can pronounce it correctly, catastrophism?
Catastrophism, yes.
Catastrophism, okay. First thing that came to my mind, how many times have we heard the world is going to end on a certain day? And usually that, we hear that with, some of the religious leaders. And as you're mentioning and stressing about problem solving, that people tend to prepare themselves for the end rather than what can we do, to either prevent that from happening, what can we do as a problem solving mechanism, but we rather focus on the end. And I think that's what I was kind of getting out of when I really was looking at the definition of that word. That's why I keep hearing everyone coming out every now and then. The world is going to end. It was supposed to have ended, I believe, 2 years ago in October. And I believe the year prior to that. And just how individuals, really move on that. When I heard somebody say they sold their home, gave up their life savings, all to prepare for the end rather than problem solve.
I was thinking about when you said declinism, are we in this spiral of we think it's declining, so we're I'm not gonna work because it's not gonna work anyway.
Hey, when I think about declinism, I think about perspective. Everything has a perspective. How do you see the glass, half empty or half full? If you have a problem, there's got to be some solution.
When I think of declinism, I think of pessimism. And what's the opposite of pessimism? Optimism. In order for things to work, you have to be optimistic. What you put out there is what you will receive. If you believe that things are going to decline and things are going to go down bad, and therefore that's what your life will bring. But if you're optimistic and you believe that there's bigger things out there that we're not coming to the end, that maybe that religion isn't bad, then great things will happen. It's the world, the bubble that you live in, you know?
I think, we have problems in society today. There's no question about that. I think we all agree that there are problems. Your terms, declinism and catastrophism and, there's one,
Apocalyptic.
apocalyptic, yeah. Well, there's an element of truth. I think those terms are extreme. There are problems that need our attention. And different people have different ideas about how to approach those problems. I think maybe it's based on, your perspective. Critical thinking, logical reasoning, intellectual curiosity leads each of us to view a problem in a unique way. Society in this country, I think, is pretty sharply divided today, and it didn't get that way overnight. It has taken a number of years for us to fall into this mentality. But there's always hope. I try to be optimistic. Someone said, you can call the glass half empty or you can call it half full. I choose to call it half full. And then talk about how we can make it even better.
Being 2 years older than Dirk, I would go back to 1950 just to be older. Works for me. It's kind of ironic that Steve said 1950. About an hour and a half ago, I asked my class to look up what was concerning high school administrators in 1950 versus what our high school administrators worry about today. And you find things like chewing gum, swearing in class, truancy. Today it's guns, knives, active shooter, metal detector. Right? And even that being the case, in my heart of hearts, things aren't getting worse, they're different, all right? Things have been invented. I mean, I go back to many moons ago in the police academy, all 8 weeks. We didn't even train to things because it didn't exist. Cybercrime wasn't a problem because UNIVAC hadn't been invented yet. And some people may remember UNIVAC, but those under 75 wouldn't. But things are different. Things evolve every day. New problems will come up. Or educating a generation of students that can indeed handle those things. We teach a cybercrime course even, because that's an issue. I mean, things are happening, every day in the news, now the WikiLeaks on CIA, what they're listening to. Steve knows I belong to a lot of cigar blogs, that's my vice. One of the issues was the CIA listening on your phone conversations. If they want to listen to my wife giving me the shopping list, or me writing on a cigar blog, God bless them. if what they do saves somebody's life because they stop a terrorist attack, great. So those things don't really bother me, but there are things coming out every day, and if we don't, as a college, teach to those things, develop the problem solvers, we're gonna have a problem, because it is different. I mean, there's things that happen, we didn't have active shooters. I mean, that wasn't an issue, but now it is an issue. We have to train police officers how to handle that. We have to train college administrators what to do. We have to train instructors what to do. These are things that, yes, they happen, they're different. Is it any worse? No, because bad things happened in the 1950s, happened in the 1920s. I mean, I look back at some of the history and the bullet holes in the side of Bonnie and Clyde's, vehicle. I mean, there were bad things then, but we evolve, we work, and that problem solving is the key. If we don't do that, we're in deep trouble.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the gloom and doom concepts that you raise here are totally worth discussing. But I think that the flip side of all of the declinism and the catastrophic concept would be sustainability. I think that would be the flip side of all of this. I watched a documentary recently that had all to do with these super greenhouses that are becoming prevalent all around the world, that whatever the climate is, whatever the growing conditions are, these greenhouses can sustain life. I think that society raising itself to a level where we can focus on those type of positives as opposed to those type of social negatives will serve to be the problem-solving element that we'll need to go forward as a global society. The other thing I want to just briefly speak on would be the contrast between the university students and the community college students. I can't let that go unaddressed. While and I agree, the social, university students oftentimes involve themselves in the social issues of the world and are very out front about it. But I think that we, as community college administrators and leaders and instructors, I think that we focus on the interpersonal skills of students, which lead to them becoming those type of citizens that will ultimately address the ills of our society.
What I think about mostly is globalization. I had expected to see quite a few young people here to see how they're thinking and to broaden my idea and be able to relate to them in terms of where they're going. I'm seasoned, and I graduated from a community college. Back in the day, historically, they were known as the technical schools, and they have grown, and they were pretty much lined up like high school. And when I was attending, I felt like I was still in high school, but I was married, I was a mother, I having my children, and I wanted to be treated that way. Then I transferred to East Carolina University, where I got my undergraduate degree, and then I got my master's degree. My children are adults now, and I'm lining up in terms of, am I the child, or do you consider me the mother? When I think about this, I think about whose hands am I going to be in? These are the generation that is going to line up and run the country. And when you think about it and think about diversity, I'm all for diversity and the different cultures to see how they all come together, because at one time we were separated. I think about in terms of having a renewing of your mind, to change your way of thinking. You do the same thing, you pretty much get the same thing. And because of my age, I'm looking at something different, something somewhere that I may be able to relate to all people as much as possible. And when I think of traveling and leaving the country, I think in terms of my health and my immune system. I don't look forward to that. I look forward to being at home, whereas hopefully we will continue to help the system as far as health goes and catastrophic injuries, the severity of, that there would be some help for all of us. So globalization is what I'm looking at, and before I was narrow and I did not have such an open mind. I do now when I look at my children, and when I look at my children, they are of different colors, shades. And so when they relate to me, that they can accept me when they look at the color of my skin and how I relate to them and being and loving them, and that they will love also and demonstrate that love. Because we have to think in terms of love instead of the green all the time. It's helpful, but we need a lot more than that. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Parker. I'm the SGA parliamentarian for the Rocky Mount and Tarboro campus. Whenever I hear people talk about globalization or the community, the word hope always comes up. To me, hope is about life and the perseverance of life and preserving life. That's what hope means. So to me, in general, as a young man going to school, most college students tend to only focus on their homework without ever really understanding that there's a real world outside of their textbooks and their grades, and that it's actually real monsters out there, not just the monsters that are in your book, such as the equations that Mr. Kenneth Jones gives his students every other week, or the words that are on Ms. Howell's paper that she might make you grade every other week that she has to give you. There's real problems out here in the world, and as students, we should just focus on, we should not just focus on what's in the classroom. We should understand that there is a world out there, and we should be leaders. We should have a fiery spirit to go out there and to understand that we have to take the world. There's no purpose if Edgecombe Community College's symbol is fire if we don't have it in us. Thank you.
Reverend Parker, a preacher is going to say anything.
A few words?
A few words. I have a few words. I didn't write it down. I think there was a long word there called declination. Declinism, okay. I'll just like to speak real briefly to that. I think that, I believe that I see it being something of an issue that should be brought to the forefront in terms of we have progressed. We talk about the number of people within the population of the world increasingly every day, second. But in that vein, I see things that are continuing to grow, whether it's in terms of decline. No, I see the issues growing. We have more technical skills, ability, more education, and the likes. We have more wealth in the world, the country than ever. But at the same time, you look around, the problems, social ills, and wars are continuing also to grow. They are not diminishing. We live in an industrialization, industrial world. We live in where we have all the electronics, all the gadgetry that we have. You would think that we say life has improved. But when we look at the world population, look at the masses, the majority of people has life improved to them. So are we increasing or are we declining? Wealth is increasing in some areas of the world, but for the majority of the world, it's not. There are more people in poverty than there are people in prosperity.
There's more violence now than ever. There's more technical knowledge than ever. But yet, there are more people, literacy is growing. It's not the gap between the have and the have-not, it's widening. So are we really going up or down? We have more violence than ever. We have more, in our country alone, we have more wealth and all, but yet we're ramping up for war. We spend more money to defend rather than, we say, to defend the country, yet at the same time, look at the poverty that's in our country. Are we really empowering the people? Are we declining, or are we really going the other way? So I think that's a focus that we ought to talk about, and then I'll say real quickly, as relates to the community college versus our universities, we are preparing people for the same problems or the same issues that they're going to face. They're going to face the same issue, whether you're in community college or you're on the university level. You're going to face the same world. You're not going into different worlds. You got some of the same issues. A university graduate, as a technical or community college graduate, has the same issues, same problems. So we better not just isolate them, focus on just one. They better prepare for the real world that the university students are going to face as well as you're going to face, because it's the same issues.
Thank you. Would anyone else like a word, to get a word in, edgewise? Edgewise, little pun there, here. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, and I thank you, very productive, I think, and a very positive discussion, and I feel it is of utmost importance that we keep our vision historically informed, positive, problem-solving, and mission-focused as we examine difficult issues. We're not afraid to teach difficult issues, and we are preparing a whole generation of the problem solvers of the future. Turning to our program, let's see, we can take we're ready to go with Dr. Lamb at this point.
We get a
15-minute break. Wonderful. That sounds great to me. Going to take a little break, and then Dr. Lamb is going to make some opening comments, and then our keynote address will follow. So we will return here in exactly 15 minutes. Attendance will be taken at that point.
If you need class credit, please come down and sign our attendance record. It's going to ask for your name, for the class that you are in, and your instructor's name. Need that? I'll do that. We'll be back in 15
Hey, Kenny, how are you? Very nice. It's taking me today.
lives of our students and those of our local citizens than through discussions around our beautiful world, sustainability in the arts and in the environment. Providing intellectual stimulation creates engagement and even transformation as our attendees strengthen their knowledge and understanding of global citizenship and gain appreciation of traditions and beliefs unlike our own. Thank you, Ms. LaMonica, for providing the framework through which transformations will occur today. The global economy in which we live has no doubt triggered a change in operations for businesses, industries, and consumers. The global economy has also changed the way that community colleges view the critical skill sets that students need upon graduation. Today, community colleges have an obligation to graduate students not only with marketable skills, but also with knowledge and with awareness of a global marketplace. Edgecombe Community College, as a result, places much importance on global education. Under the leadership of the Diversity and Global Connections Committee, the group hosts this institute as well as other activities for the college and the community. The college further supports globalization through its partnership with Worldview, an international program for educators at UNC, and you'll find out a little bit more about that in a few minutes, and through its Travel Abroad program, through workforce development in other countries, and through educational partnerships with Finland and China. With global opportunities at every turn, Edgecombe will continue to focus on the importance of globalization and on preparing graduates to be successful in the global marketplace. Thank you, Carol Malin and the Diversity and Global Connections Committee for providing the leadership for planning and execution of today's event. And thank you, workshop presenters, for sharing your knowledge and your expertise with the attendees. Please join me in applauding the efforts of these leaders. And to each of you, thank you for your attendance. May you leave here today more informed and with a greater appreciation for the diversity that exists in the world around us. Again, thank you for being here and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Dr. Lamb, for all the support that you give to us. It means the world to us. We are very blessed to have a wonderful speaker with us this afternoon, Ms. Charlene LaMonica, who is the director of Worldview in, y'all can see, in Chapel Hill, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. As director, she works with Worldview's partners both on and off campus. We are very lucky and very blessed to be a partner of Worldview. We learn so much from it every time we go. I think those of us who have been to the symposia that they have every November, we always bring something away from it. What we had this past symposium was a wonderful talk by Dr. Robert Walker from the Population Institute that you all will get to hear some about. So we are very blessed that Worldview has come to visit our campus and come to see what wonderful things we do. Our speaker, I've been trying to get her to come for a long time, and I'm so glad she's here. She has a background in Chinese history, and her international career began in the 1980s. She led some of the first American medical and legal delegations to the People's Republic of China. In the United States, she's taught English, history, language arts, and social studies in middle and high schools for more than 15 years, and also taught world history at the community college and university levels. Before she joined Worldview, she served as Director of International Studies at the Charlotte Country Day School, where she designed and coordinated faculty and student exchanges throughout the world. Her involvement in international business and education has allowed
offer to collaborate with those working in Asia, Europe, Latin America, the former Soviet Union, and parts of Africa. She holds a master's degree from UNC Charlotte and a bachelor's degree from Boston College. So please welcome Ms. Charlene LaMonica. Hello.
Hello.
Good afternoon. I'm going to see if this will work. If not, I will stay right here next to the mic. I've had such a terrific day here. And I want to thank Carol for the warm invitation. Dr. Lamb, it's been a pleasure. And meeting Worldview friends on your turf, people that I see at our symposium. So thank you very much for this very warm welcome. And also, I will say, a real treat was being able to sit in on Carol's class and to hear your eloquent comments as student body president. Really, we're all about the students. That's what we're all here for. And so with that said, thank you. I do want to mention that, as was mentioned earlier, Worldview has been a partner with Edgecombe Community College since 2005. And what we have, basically, when we were looking, I was looking at some data collection, 98 educators from Edgecombe Community College has visited, participated in our programs since then. So we're looking for when that hits 100, which hopefully will be at the end of the month. Because what those of you that do not know what Worldview is, we are a public service program at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and we provide global education to community college educators and also K-12 educators throughout the state. And it's really our mission to connect university resources, because we're a public university, we're your university, we all share the same resources. And so, and also, we don't just bleed blue. Where's Michael Jordan? Even though I love your name, and I was looking for you because I saw that you went to our Leaders Program many years ago, and so it's a pleasure to see you. We do call on university faculty from East Carolina. Winston-Salem State will be coming, Johnson C. Smith will be coming, NC State at our seminars. Unfortunately, we have to ask Duke once in a while to participate, but I say that with tongue-in-cheek, they've been a great partner. So anyway, with that said, we connect university resources to educators all over the state on global issues. So today, I'm going to be, hopefully, quite pointed with 3 words: relevance, perspective, and connection. And I feel very fortunate to have been here earlier today because I've heard these words today. I've heard these words in Carol's class. I've heard these words with conversations with colleagues here. And so we're going to begin with the word relevance. So how global is North Carolina? Well, I think all of in this room knows North Carolina is very global. And I want to drill down a little bit in that and say, okay, so who are North Carolina's global citizens? Who are they? And for how long have we had global citizens in North Carolina? Well, I will say, I'm going to share with you one of my favorite photographs that I've ever found as a researcher a long time ago. And that is one of your people here in Edgecombe County. This gentleman, right in the middle, is Richard Henry Gregory. And many years, the first time I came to North Carolina was to work with the North Carolina China Council of the Asia Society, interviewing North Carolinians that lived in China, looking at those global citizens many years ago. The photographs are now in archives. But I met a woman in Tarboro. Perhaps some of you know the family. She's passed away several years ago, but her name was Jane Gregory Narrow. She also, do I have somebody? I knew I'd have somebody in here. Okay. So she was a physician trained at Duke, one of the first women, but she grew up in China. She grew up in China, And I interviewed her, and this was her dad. And their family lived in China as global citizens from North Carolina. When I interviewed her in Tarboro, I walked into her home. It was filled with Chinese furniture. I was really overwhelmed. This is a kid from New Jersey who came down for her first job here in Chapel Hill and then traveling around the state to see the global capacity in the town of Tarboro by this one family. And we know that's just one little family with lots of roots. And this was Jane's mom in her Chinese beautiful robe, dating back, if you can't see it, from 1912 in Shanghai. So of course, this was all tobacco. The Gregorys were there because of the British American Tobacco Company. And so I had wonderful conversations around the state with people that were global citizens from many, many years ago. If you're in Tarboro and you're in Rocky Mount, it's about tobacco. If you're in the West, it's about missions. If you're around Fayetteville, it's about military. So global citizens have been around a long, long time. So how global is North Carolina now? We're still on relevance. 162% increase in international trade. And this particular one, I'm going to say 1992 to 2011. 162% increase. So I asked myself, okay, what do I know about Edgecombe County? So I knew I was coming. And I called a colleague of mine in economic development in Raleigh, and I said, I'm going to Edgecombe Community College, and I need to know about exports. And I didn't hear back. I sent an email, and I didn't hear back. And finally, I got an email Monday morning, bright early, and then we've been working on this. We're excited you're going to Edgecombe County. So when we look at the exports, if you add it all up, you are so connected globally with this state. Of course, I know you know this, but I think it's fun to see it in print. And that is data from 2015. Now, I know since then you have a lot of the international businesses moving in and out. So relevance. We know that this is important and it's a connection to your community. When we look around the public schools, and we work with K-12 schools as well, which are schools that feed into your community college, more than 300 different languages are spoken. I couldn't believe that when I heard that. 232 different languages in Johnston County alone. It's a different day. So we finished our little word of relevance. Now let's look at the second word, which is perspective. Now, those of you that know me know that I started my career in China. Then I went into research, and I fought everything to not be a teacher. Can anybody guess why?
Parents were teachers.
My mother was a teacher, my father was a teacher, my aunts and uncles were teachers, and I said, I'm not going to be a teacher, I'm going to China. And then when I got back from China in the 80s, I said, I've got to teach about China. Anyway, I got into the classroom, and I was all excited about my content. And I saw this student in the back of the class, and I thought, this student is not prepared for class. She's sitting there, she looks totally disengaged. She doesn't want to learn. And then I had all these imagined things about what this student was doing wrong. Or maybe there was a problem at home, or maybe there was an eating disorder. I had a list of things until a very wise mentor of mine said, look inside, Charlotte. Maybe you're not reaching her because of what you're doing in your classroom. I had a single story about that student. I was looking at her through my lens. And this woman, who is a friend of mine now, who is my colleague, really helped me change the way I looked at things. Because when I would ask my student, her name was Michaela, why think about global citizen? What about global sustainability? Her answer would be, so what? And I came to realize that the real magic was of teaching was to say to the students on the first day of class, the best question you can ask me is, so what? Because if I'm not teaching to the so what, nothing matters. So, with that said, I'm going to move on to a very short clip. It's about 6 minutes. And I hope that you will find this, well, I have a funny feeling you're going to love it, or I'm going to put it in. But I hope you will find this useful in your classrooms or in your homes talking about single stories. Because I think if we can have conversations about difficult issues in a respectful way about single stories that we put on each other, then we will all have a better segue into a better future. This woman is quite remarkable. I'm curious, anyone have read, are people aware of her books, or anybody here familiar with her? She is a Nigerian writer. Her name is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and her story is very powerful. She, and this particular clip, which is a TED Talk, 6 minutes long, was very moving to me, and I hope you find it interesting. So we're going to move right to the link, and cross your fingers, everything works. I'm confident it will, but I'm going to comment. Just watch it about 6 minutes.
I'm a storyteller, and I would like to tell you a few personal stories about what I like to call the danger of the single story. I grew up on a university campus in eastern Nigeria. My mother says that I started reading at the age of 2, although I think 4 is probably close to the truth. So I was an early reader, and what I read were British and American children's books. I was also an early writer. And when I began to write at about the age of 7, stories in pencil with crayon illustrations that my poor mother was obligated to read, I wrote exactly the kinds of stories I was reading. All my characters were white and blue-eyed. They played in the snow. They ate apples. And they talked a lot about the weather, how lovely it was that the sun had come out. Now this despite the fact that I lived in Nigeria. I had never been outside Nigeria. We didn't have snow. We ate mangoes. And we never talked about the weather because there was no need to. My characters also drank a lot of ginger beer because the characters in the British books I read drank ginger beer. Never mind that I had no idea what ginger beer was. And for many years afterwards, I would have a desperate desire to taste ginger beer. But that is another story. What this demonstrates, I think, is how impressionable and vulnerable we are in the face of a story, particularly as children. Because all I had read were books in which characters were foreign, I had become convinced that books, by their very nature, had to have foreigners in them, and had to be about things with which I could not personally identify. Now, things changed when I discovered African books. There weren't many of them available, and they weren't quite as easy to find as the foreign books, but because of writers like Chinua Achebe and Kamara Laye, I went through a mental shift in my perception of literature. I realized that people like me, girls with skin the color of chocolate, whose kinky hair could not form ponytails, could also exist in literature. I started to write about things I recognized. Now, I loved those American and British books I read. They stirred my imagination, they opened up new worlds for me. But the unintended consequence was that I did not know that people like me could exist in literature. So what the discovery of African writers did for me was this: it saved me from having a single story of what books are. I come from a conventional middle-class Nigerian family. My father was a professor. My mother was an administrator. And so we had, as was the norm, living domestic help who would often come from nearby rural villages. So the year I turned 8, we got a new houseboy. His name was Fide. The only thing my mother told us about him was that his family was very poor. My mother sent yams and rice and old clothes to his family. And when I didn't finish my dinner, my mother would say, "Finish your food. Don't you know people like Fide's family have nothing?" So I felt enormous pity for Fide's family. Then one Saturday, we went to his village to visit. And his mother showed us a beautifully patterned basket made of dyed raffia that his brother had made. I was startled. It had not occurred to me that anybody in his family could actually make something. All I had heard about them was how poor they were, so that it had become impossible for me to see them as anything else but poor. Their poverty was my single story of them. Years later, I thought about this when I left Nigeria to go to university in the United States. I was 19. My American roommate was shocked by me. She asked where I had learned to speak English so well, and was confused when I said that Nigeria happened to have English as its official language. She asked if she could listen to what she called my tribal music, and was consequently very disappointed when I produced my tape of Mariah Carey. She assumed that I did not know how to use a stove. What struck me was this: she had felt sorry for me even before she saw me. Her default position toward me as an African was a kind of patronizing, well-meaning pity. My roommate had a single story of Africa, a single story of catastrophe. In this single story, there was no possibility of Africans being similar to her in any way, no possibility of feelings more complex than pity, no possibility of a connection as human equals. I will say that before I went to the US, I didn't consciously identify as African. But in the US, whenever Africa came up, people turned to me, never mind that I knew nothing about places like Namibia. But I did come to embrace this new identity, and in many ways I think of myself now as African, although I still get quite irritable when Africa is
I hope you enjoyed that. Because when I first heard this particular story, all I kept thinking of, this is what we need to do every day in a classroom, is to really stamp out single stories. And that doesn't just go for what students need to learn, it's what educators need to learn. And it's really hard work, because it's really hard to get beyond our biases. And so I'm glad you enjoyed that. So what I'd like you to do right now is to turn to your neighbor, or find a neighbor, for 2 minutes, and think about a single story that you face, and how did you successfully stamp out of that single story. Because that's another thing about what we like to do with Worldview with our partners, is really to think about, we can have insight about things, but we need action. And I think we need to realize the good that's already being done. So think about a single story, and I'll just time you up for 2 minutes, like any good teacher, right? You have 2 minutes, and then I'll cut you off.
What are you saying, sir? Are you talking, you're going?
It's one of those P words. Charlotte, yeah.
It's coming out. I guess I said class like that.
Later on, you either found a way to disprove that single story that they had about you, or they disprove that single story. You do? Okay.
I'd really like to learn how to do it. That's one of the first students do. connection continues. Because these are the kind of things we need to always remember, is what single stories we've already had experience stamping out, and how we can share with others how to do it. So the third and final word is connection. Connection, and I think about that as a partnership that we have with Edgecombe Community College and other partners around the state. But what does it mean for educators, for students, and for community people? So global citizens, that was really the heart of what I wanted to talk to you about today, and actually have conversation with you about. I hope we'll have a robust conversation afterwards. So global citizens build on personal and professional connections. And I think about, and this is a photograph from a book that I'll tell you about in a little bit. But I think that global citizens, local is global, and to identify the global citizens that we have in our community, people that care about the land, people that care about sustainability and the environment, people that relish their own traditions, their own communities, and the fabric of our society, which is so multicultural. And sometimes our connections are personal. They're family pictures. And actually, this is my family picture. That's my dad on the burro in the middle of that group of folks in Sicily in 1930, when he went back to Italy to collect his mother's belongings. She always thought she'd go back and didn't. And so that's probably one of the reasons that I love global work so much, is because it was ingrained in me as a child, how important it is to learn about the world. And I have no doubt that you all have these family stories as well. Global citizens are local citizens. And these are two gentlemen that I've recently met, and I'm really excited to say they're going to be at Worldview at the end of this month. These gentlemen have really interesting backgrounds, and I'll begin with our global citizen to the left, William Kamwamba. And here's his, I always bring a prop, just like I did in my classroom, right? So William is probably in his late 20s, early 30s now. But at the age of 14, he grew up in the village, in a very, very, very poor, famine-stricken village in Malawi. William only had a library that he could go to because schools were closed. And so he went to the library, he read what he could, and he put together some scraps and built a windmill, which then harnessed energy for the entire village and provided energy for the entire village. It's an amazing story. In today's years of technology, someone was able to do a YouTube of that 14-year-old boy in Malawi, and it went viral. And then he did a TED Talk, which you also can, okay, so Samantha, you've seen it, okay. So the TED Talk of William Kamwamba then propelled him to go to a university in South Africa, then to Dartmouth. And when we were planning our Africa seminar, I got a call from the woman working on it, and she said, "You're never going to believe who is now in Chapel Hill." And I said, "Who?" And she said, "William Kamwamba. He married a woman who's a doctoral student in the School of Ed." So we're lucky to have him working in Chapel Hill with an organization called WiderNet, and we asked him to speak. His book is The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, and it's in middle school versions and high school versions and adult versions, so we're really excited. What a global citizen. A mild-mannered, gentle, wonderful, smart young man that came into our office, and I just couldn't believe, you could just see how smart this guy was. It was so exciting. And we're really thrilled that he's going to join us. Paul Quadros, another global citizen. His family's from Peru. He's a faculty member in the School of Media and Journalism. And in Siler City, North Carolina, he coached a soccer team. The soccer team was made of Latinx students that were fairly, well, I think it's fair to say they were really not accepted by the community until they won the championship. And then the book came out. And A Home on the Field, which is now a documentary. Global citizens, people that are making our world better every day. So what else about global citizens? Global citizens, like here at Edgecombe, are aware, are curious, and value history, value and are deeply informed. And also understand that access to knowledge, technology, and resources can really shape an opinion, for the positive, or if you don't have the correct information, it shapes an opinion that's not correct. So I wanted to share with you a map that one of my colleagues recently put together, which I think is very telling in terms of when people think of the continent of Africa, frequently students do not understand the magnitude of it until you do something like this. I think it's a remarkable graphic. So global citizens are curious about this, want the right information, and want to be sure to have conversations about that. So global citizens understand that audiences differ on the place of culture, geography, where they come from, their faith, the ideology, their wealth, and have different perceptions. But with that, I'm still a firm believer that global citizens can really change the world for the better. Always. I think it's really, and I was so excited about coming up here and being in classrooms and seeing colleagues that I've only seen at our symposium, seeing you on your own turf. And I've got to say, I thought, well, how can I talk about global citizens, though? Because it's not a person, right? It's not a thing. It's really becoming. It's something, I think global citizenry becomes. It just isn't. And it's dynamic, and it evolves, because the world changes so fast. And it's evolutionary, and it grows over time. And I started writing my journal, and I was like, I gotta stop. Because it's flexible, but it has nuance, and it has great strength. And you know that when you walk in classrooms and you see exciting things happening with students. So, part 2. How can global citizens contribute to a real sustainable world? And when I was thinking about this transition, I thought, okay, so what does sustainable mean? What we're going to talk about now, the third word, continue with, connection. Global citizens take action by making a connection, taking a call to action. Connection. I absolutely love this quote by a Saudi astronaut who was at the International Space Station. The first day or two, we all pointed to our countries. The third or fourth day, we were pointing to our continents. And by the fifth day, we were aware only of the earth. That was so meaningful to me. So how do we create this? How do we connect? How do we take global citizens and then connect it to something lasting, something making change? Sustainability, what does it even mean? So I went back to the symposium that we did last year, and my colleague Robert Walker from the Population Institute, and I started thinking about the way he framed it, and I'd like to share some of these slides. Sustainability is the capacity to endure. the ability to do what we are doing indefinitely without diminishing the life-supporting capacity of the earth. So, how are we doing? Let's take our temperature on this. Using 150% of the Earth's renewable capacity, by 2030, we will need 2 Earths to sustain us. And that's from the Population Institute in DC. Now, were we talking doom and gloom earlier when we were looking at the So I remember when I saw this and I was like, oh. And I remember looking around at everyone in this symposium, you could just feel like, oh, you just feel the weight. Because we're all on this planet together, right? So, sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And this was the report from the Prime Minister of Norway in Oslo in 1987. I mean, we've been talking about this a long time. But hopeful, that great noun we've been talking about, I'm still hopeful. So the sustainability goals from the UN, which I'm sure many of you are aware of, if you go online or share these with your students, it really is a commitment over time from nations that are saying, okay, we want to really work toward a sustainable life, sustainable businesses, sustainable homes, sustainable health. You know, the optimism is still there, and we've just got to keep going with it. So I'd like to introduce you to the Worldview team. And actually, there are a couple people that have moved on, and new people have come. But for the most part, it's the same group. And I dearly appreciate everyone's work. But the reason why I wanted to put them up, because we had a call to action when we decided we were going to do a symposium on the environment and sustainability. And one of the things that I have said in the past and always have learned from people is walk the talk, right? You've all heard it. I see everybody shaking their head. That's right. Because how can you possibly teach students things if they're not seeing you do it, right? Or even if you, especially if you parent. We all know that. So we decided that we were going to be modeling in our office sustainability, environmental sustainability. So we decided we would link up with Carolina Green on campus, which is a big strategic sustainability plan, and people went through training and everything, and this is just a little bit of a story, which hopefully you'll see that we're trying to walk the walk, right? And here is Alexandria Falconberry in the community garden on campus. Now, I will say, Alexandria came to me the week before seminars. We're having 300 teachers coming in to Worldview, and she told me she wanted to go work in the community garden. And I really respect her and love the work that she did. And I always want to be supportive, but I said, Alex, we have 300 teachers coming in. How can you take time off to go work in the community garden? And she looked at me and she said, you know I will get my work done. And I said, I know, okay, go work in the garden. Well, that was the photograph that was on the UNC website the next day, Worldview working in the community garden, preparing for the symposium on the environment and sustainability. And it was a huge wake-up call for me always to be aware that we've got to walk the walk. Absolutely, nothing less. And frequently I learned that from students, from people I work with. So the call to action, what can we do? What can we do? Save electricity, compost, adjust thermostats. If we all did it, we would really be in a lot better shape. And I have no doubt many of you are already doing this. Bike to work. We have decided to not have any more bottled waters at Worldview programs, which was a little bit tricky, but we did it because we wanted to be sustainable and also everything recyclable and various different recycling materials. Because we want to do global sustainability through global citizenship. So I just have a little bit of a chart here. I'm not a real big chart person. I'm much more a narrative person. But I thought this might be helpful because understanding, basically taking action, understanding relevance, perspective, and connection was really the key. Those three words and how we're going to model with works that we do with our students. So please remember the three words, if nothing else, and hope, because we're all in this together and we're very grateful for the collaboration with Edgecombe Community College. It's been a true pleasure to be here. One thing that I do want to mention is that Robert Walker, the Population Institute I've worked with, he's been to Worldview a number of times, and when I asked him if we could make his materials available, he said, well, I'll be happy to send some books to Edgecombe Community College. So we also have some books here courtesy of the Population Institute that hopefully you'll find helpful in your classes. So many thanks. Really appreciate your time, and it's a pleasure. So I don't know the timing. How are we doing for time? Do you want to?
Stephen, I think Carol has stepped out to check on the reception.
1:21.
And I think I'll turn it over to you now, if you don't mind closing. Here she comes.
Okay.
Yeah, there she is.
Okay.
There she is.
I'm just getting the reception ready. What a fantastic talk, y'all. Wasn't that amazing? I think it deserves one more round of applause. We hope that you will come back for tomorrow's events. We start at 8 o'clock in the Barnes Auditorium. We're going to do Sustainability Jeopardy. I might have to disqualify George Anderson. If we were doing Wheel of Fortune, I'd say he could be our Van Horky. We're doing that. We're doing. You guys have got the handouts for everything. Just stay in here and converse, chat, and we'll come get you as soon as the reception is ready. So.